characteristics of the microwave heating is volumetric heating, right? Compared with the conventional heating method. And it's kind of similar with the RF heating. It's also a volumetric heating method. So how can it heat the food volumetrically? Actually, there are two heating mechanisms. The first one is charged ion oscillation, and the second one is dipole molecular rotation. So it means that we all know that under the radio frequency or microwave heating, right? The there are electromagnetic field, right? So like this, and the charged ion and the dipole molecules will change the directions at very high speed under the high frequency electric field. So those high frequency movement of the charged ions and dipole molecules will generate heat inside the food and then cause the temperature increase. That's how radio frequency and microwave heats the food, right? So because of this, it can heat the food volumetrically and very high speed. That's the significant advantage of this technology. And also it's the clearly difference compared with the conventional heating method. As we know that for the conventional heating method, heat is by convection or conduction, right? From the outside layer to the inside. So it takes relatively long time from the surface to the inside of the food materials. And it would obviously cause the non-uniform heating, right? So this is the unique heating characteristics of the RF heating and microwave heating, rapid and volumetric heating. And this is briefly introduction about the RF heating advantages. The first one is, like I mentioned, rapid and volumetric heating. And the second one is that RF heating has relatively larger penetration depths compared with the microwave heating. And RF heating also, it has very high energy efficiency. So for the RF heating, energy efficiency is around 70, and for the microwave, it's around 50%. But for the conventionally heating method, it's only around 20%. So you can say RF heating has very high energy efficiency, and also it has differential heating. I will talk about it later when we talk about the application of the RF heating. And also for the RF heating, it can instant start and stop of the power. And of course, it's a safe and eco-friendly treatment method, right? So it can be used in food processing. And this figure shows the difference of the RF and the microwave. So you can clearly see the above one, this is the microwave, right? Generally for the microwave, there's a waveguide transmits the microwave into this heating cavity. And in this cavity, in this microwave heating cavity, the microwave is totally random distribution, right? That's a huge problem for the microwave oven heating process. And this is for the RF heating. Generally, it has the two parallel electrodes, and the electric field distribution is relatively uniform between those two parallel electrodes. So that's a huge advantage compared with the microwave. You see, RF is a relatively uniform electric distribution, but for the microwave oven heating, it's totally random distribution. So that's why if you use the microwave oven to do some experiment, it's how to say, it's you cannot repeat exactly the same treatment, right? So it's meaningless to use the microwave oven to heat the food, right? You cannot repeat this procedure since the electric field is totally random distribution inside this heating cavity. So here is a comparison between the RF and the microwave heating process. This is a similarity. Both of them are rapid and volumetric heating methods. They are advanced thermal processing methods, and they are safe and eco-friendly treatment of the treatment method for food products, and they have same governing equations, and both of them are dielectric heating methods, and they all have the higher heating efficiency compared with the conventional heating methods, and both of them can be designed as a continuous process. So this is very important if we try to scale up for the industrial application. And of course, RF heating is different with the microwave heating, right? So the difference, the first one is that the frequency is different, then the wavelength is different, and then the penetration depth is totally different, right? So RF generally has the longer penetration depth, and it can treat the bulk materials with large thickness. So this is totally different with the microwave heating. And RF has the relatively uniform distribution compared with the microwave, and has the higher heating efficiency than microwave heating. And the system configuration is totally different. For the RF heating, generally the system is much simple than the microwave heating system. And the cost of the equipment is less than microwave equipment. So that's the difference between microwave and RF heating. So let's talk about the RF heating uniformity. We know the heating principle of the RF heating, right? And it's a similarity and the difference compared with the microwave. And so how about the heating uniformity of the RF heating? We all know that for the conventional heating method, the heating is not totally uniform, right? Since the heat is transferred from the outside to the inside, right? But for the RF heating, like I mentioned, it's a volumetric heating method. So theoretically, it would have the better heating uniformity than conventional heating method, right? But in reality, there are still non-uniform heating. So why it would still have the non-uniform heating? Generally, we can say we can talk this from two sides. The first one is electromagnetic field distribution, and the second one is the homogeneity of the heated materials, right? If those two parts have no problem, then RF heating can have the very uniform heat, but unfortunately not. Why? We can see this picture, right? This is food materials placed between those two parallel electrodes. You can see there is some electromagnetic field concentration at the corner and edge. So in this part, those corner and edge will have the overheating. We also call it corner and edge heating. So those would cause the non-uniform heating. It's from the electric field distribution side. And from the other side, most of the food materials, they are not totally homogeneous. So it means the property of the food is not totally uniform. This would also cause the non-uniform heat, right? So those two main factors would result in non-uniform heating for the RF heat. But generally speaking, RF heating would have the better uniformity than conventional heating methods. We should know this. But it's not totally uniform, especially when we do the pasteurization or sterilization study, right? We try to make this heating process more uniform to kill the bacteria and keep the good quality of the food. So as we know that it's not a total uniform heat. So how can we improve the heating uniformity of RF heating? Actually, there are many kind of methods was proposed by the scientists to improve the heating uniformity. This slide, I list some of the methods, including like using the hot air or hot water to improve the heating uniformity, and also we can make the sample movement during the heating, right? To improve the heating uniformity. And also we can make the sample rotation or mixing the samples during the heating process to improve the heating uniformity. And also we can use the computer simulation methods to help us to improve the RF heating uniformity. Actually, a lot of factors would affect RF heating uniformity, including like sample size and sample position between those two parallel electrodes. And also the bending electrode would also affect the heating uniformity. And also we can use adding some surrounding materials to improve the heating uniformity. And also we can add the blocks on the electrode. So actually all of those methods are based on the two parts like we just mentioned. The first one is try to improve the electromagnetic field distribution. And the second one is try to improve the homogeneity of the heating materials. From those two sides, we can improve the heating uniformity. So that's about the RF heating, its principle and its advantage and disadvantages for this technology. And now I would like to, probably many students would curious about, so is there any commercial applications for this new technology in food processing? Actually, the answer is yes. There is some applications in the food processing. The first industrial application of this technology is the post-baking of crackers. This was first used in the United States. You can think about it. Why we using the RF heating as a post-baking method? Since this technology is a volumetric heating method, right? As we know, for the drying process, the first stage drying is relatively easier since it has very high moisture content at the beginning stage. But in the final stage, it's really hard to remove the moisture, right? And also using the conventional drying method, it's very easy for the cracker or biscuit to crispness. So using the RF technology for the post-baking, it can avoid the crispness during the final stage and increase the efficiency of removing the moisture content. So that's a huge advantage and an important application for this technology. And another one commercial application for the RF technology is thawing of the meat. Thawing of the meat. This concept was proposed probably more than 50 years, and it has few applications in the United States. And in China right now, many of the industry or companies very interested to this technology. But for this technology, it still has two problems. The first one is it can only used for the meat paste. It means that the meat with very good homogeneity and very good shape or regular shape, then the heating uniformity can be very good heating uniformity can be obtained. Otherwise, the heating uniformity would be very bad. Like we mentioned before, it will have the edge and corner heating. This is a huge limitation for this application. And the second limitation for this application is that right now we can only use RF to heat the frozen meat to about -4 degrees Celsius. If the temperature higher than that, like we heated the frozen meat to 0 degrees or higher than that, there would a phase change from the ice to water, right? We know that for the dielectric properties of the ice and the water is totally different. Like I just mentioned, for the RF heating and also for the microwave heating, they are dielectric heating methods. So dielectric properties of the food materials is a most important parameters. Submit the sample into the same microwave or RF heating, it may have different heating rates. So if the ice becomes the water has more dipole molecules than ice. right? So the water will heat much faster than S. So it will cause non-uniform heating and cause seriously quality loss. So that's why currently for this technology, we can only use this technology to heat to generally to the -4 degrees Celsius to avoid the phase change. Otherwise, the quality would have a serious quality loss. So that's two problems associated with these applications and also the limitations for these applications. And this technology currently, it has obtained a lot of attentions and try to explore in many different applications in the food processing, except those two. So I have been working with this technology for more than 10 years. So today I would like to share the several applications for this technology in food processing. The first application is for the greens, like the legumes or for the rice or for the wheat, right? This kind of greens. So the first application is like to kill the insects. We all know that for the rice or wheat, right? There will be insects, or also for the legume, there will be insects, right? It would cause a seriously quality loss and also the food safety concerns by the insects. I don't know. And generally, we are using the chemical methods, chemical fumigation methods to control the insects. But this method is not good for the environmental and human health. But the most importantly is that for the chemical fumigation method, it cannot kill the eggs of the insects. The eggs of the insects is generally located inside the greens. So it's really hard for the chemical fumigation method to kill the eggs of the insects. That's why currently all the, like the rice, right, will have the insects, especially after the summer. Currently for the industry, there's no suitable methods to kill the eggs of the insects. So that's why we're using this technology to kill the insects. So it's really a good one for these applications, actually. Why? Let's say, we talk about for the RF heating, it's a dielectric heating method, right? So for the insects, it has the totally dielectric properties compared with the greens. So from this figure, we should see, this is a dielectric loss factor of the insects, and this is the dielectric factors of the legumes. You can see the huge difference. Generally, higher dielectric loss factor will have the higher dielectric heating rate. So it means that when we subject the legume with the insects to the RF heating, the temperature increase inside the insects would be much higher than that of the greens. So it means that it's more easier to kill the insects, and it would be better for maintain the quality of the samples, right? So it's a huge advantage. So we did a lot of research in this part, including like the resistance of the different life stage of the insects, like eggs, small larvae, large larvae, pupae, and adults. We compared the heat resistance of the different life stage. And also we did the scale up test to do this disinfestation treatment. And we also evaluated the heating uniformity. This figure shows the heating uniformity. You can see generally it has very good heating uniformity. Since for this legume or greens, it has the sample is totally very uniform, right? So the uniformity generally is very good. And also we compare the quality, like the germination rate and the color. And generally, since for the insects, we don't need very high temperature. Generally, the temperature above the 50 Celsius can kill the insect. So it's different like the microorganism. For the microorganisms, we will mention it later. It's relatively hard to kill by the thermal treatment method. But for the insects, it's much easier. the temperature above the 50 Celsius would kill the insects. So this kind of the temperature won't cause the quality deterioration, right? Since we know that during the milling process, most of the drying temperature, sometimes the drying temperature we are using is more than 50 degrees Celsius, right? So this temperature is totally okay for the greens. It won't cause seriously quality loss. And also we did a very interesting work is like, we all know that it's a good technology to control the insects for the rice. But so if we want to apply this technology in the industry, we need to figure out where we should add this process, this disinfestation treatment process. So like at the beginning stage, like those rough rice, or at the middle stage, like this brown rice, or at the final stage, milled rice. So we did this comparison to see which is the good point to add this RF disinfestation treatment. And we compared the efficiency of the killing insects, and also we compared the quality. Actually, we also compared the RF hitting rate, the influence of RF hitting rate on the fissure rate and broken rate of the rice. So, and finally, we found that if we have very, very high RF hitting frequency, it would cause the loss of the or decrease of the broken rate. So generally, we need to use the mild RF heating process. Then it can keep better product quality. And we also did the sensory evaluation and found there is no clearly difference between the between the control and the RF treated samples. And this is our target insect. We call it rice vivo. This is the scientific name of it. And you can see that we can completely 100% kill of the insects, include the eggs of the insects. So this technology is a very efficient method to kill the insects and maintain the quality at the same time. Actually, besides this, we also did another thing is that besides the killing insects, we can also use this technology to dry the greens. And when they did this kind of the work, what we really want is that can we use this technology to not only kill the insects, but also reduce part of the moisture, right? We all know that before the rice milling process, most of the time we need a drying process to reduce some of the moisture content to our suitable level, and then for the milling process, right? So we propose that can we use this technology as a simultaneously disinfestation and pre-drying methods, right? So when they did this part of the research, and I wouldn't make the details about this, but another research associated with the greens is that we try to use RF for the stabilization treatment for the rice bran and wheat germ. Actually, this is really important products, right, for the green processing, and it have very high nutritional values. But the most problem is very easy for the quality deterioration. So the storage life is relatively short. So if we want to use this as a food materials, the first thing we need to do is try to stabilize them. It means that we try to inactivate the enzymes inside it, and then we can extend the shelf life of it, right? So we're using RF technology to do the stabilization treatment for the rice bran and wheat germ. Actually, we did a lot of research in our lab, and we developed the stabilization treatment, and also we evaluate the quality and shelf life of the products. And this video is we did it in the last month. It's a scale up study for the RF stabilization of the wheat germ. We can see how we did it, and then we should have a general idea. This is wheat germ. The conveyor belt is moving, but the speed is relatively slow. Since for the stabilization, we need to inactivate the enzyme. The temperature or treatment intensity to inactivate the enzyme is relatively high. For this process, we need to heat the wheat germ to 110 degrees Celsius. So totally the whole processing takes about 15 minutes. So that's why the moving speed is relatively low. So this is after our treatment, we try to measure the temperature to check the final temperature of the samples. And after that, we will try to cooling them and then collect the samples for the further quality evaluation. So that's the whole process for the RF stabilization of the wheat germ. And the second application for the RF heating is for the nuts. Generally for the nuts roasting, we are using the hot air or electric oven method, right, to roast the nuts. But for those two kind of methods, generally have the long roasting time and high energy consumption, and also it's not suitable for the large-scale industrial applications. So based on this, we first proposed that using the hot air assisted RF heating as a novel roasting method for nuts. We did for the peanuts and also for the cashew nuts and walnuts. For the almonds. This is a roasting temperature profile during the whole process. Generally, the whole roasting process takes around 30 to 50 minutes. And this is the peroxide value and quality evaluations. And we did a lot of this kind of studies. And generally speaking, this method have very good qualities compared with the conventional method. And the each time after the experiment, all the students would very excited and would very like to eat the roasted nuts. And also the flavor is very good. And we also measured this is the quality. Actually, this one is for the, okay, this is for the peanuts. And this is for the cashew nuts, I think. Oh, this is also for the peanuts. And this is a flavor compound. We also compared with the conventional roasting methods. And we also did the RF roasting of the cashew nut kernels. So from this figure, we can clearly see this is the raw cashew nuts, and this is roasted by the hot air assisted RF, and this is by conventional hot air roasting. So by did this, we can make a conclusion that hot air assisted RF roasting is an effective and promising roasting method, and it can maintain good qualities and is suitable for the large-scale productions, and also is an environmentally friendly method. And those are the another study is for the another kind of, I think it's for the almonds. And we also did the sensory evaluation. So you can see that overall acceptability for this method is very high. And the next application for the RF heating is for the fruits and vegetables. Generally, it's not very suitable for the RF heating to treat high moisture foods, to treat the high moisture food. You can see why, especially for the fruits and vegetables. Generally have the higher moisture content, it would have the higher RF heating rate, right? But like the fruits and vegetables, they have the irregular shape. So it means that it would have the edge or corner heatings. It means non-uniform heating. And another important reason is that for the fruits and vegetables, it's very sensitive to heat. The quality is very sensitive to heat. It doesn't like the low moisture greens and legumes, right? It's not very sensitive. The quality is not very sensitive to heat, but the fruits and vegetables is totally different. So generally for fruits and vegetables, we won't use the RF heating to treat the whole fruits and vegetables. But here, what I really want is try to using the RF to treat the fruits and vegetable cubes or slice. Here, I'm mainly focusing on the carrot cubes. So it means the size is totally uniform. And another thing is that we are not using the RF heating to treat the carrot cubes at the whole processing. What we really want is that first we're using the RF heating to do the fast heating process for the dry blanching treatment. We all know that during when we're cutting or slicing the fruits and vegetables, we did the blanching treatment first to maintain the color and the texture of the fruits and vegetables, right? So generally we are using the hot water or steam blanching method, but those two methods is not very efficiency and would cause a lot of the waste of the water. So what we really want is try to using the RF heating to do a quick dry blanching. And after that, we can using the hot air drying method, right, to dry the carrot cubes to certain moisture levels. And then we all know that for the whole drying process, right, the beginning stage, since it has relatively high moisture content, it's much easier to dry. And the final stage is hard to dry, like we just mentioned for the post-baking process. That's why I propose that we can use the RF heating for the final stage drying to improve the drying efficiency. So that's the whole procedure for the drying product, the raw material and blanching, and then pre-dewatering, and then dehydration. Drying process, right? And then it's a final dried products. So that's why we try to use this RF heating technology to do the dry blanching, and also we can use this for the final stage drying. So this is for the blanching. Generally, like I mentioned, using the hot water or hot steam, it requires the high temperature and cause the adverse effects on the texture and the nutritional values, especially for the water-soluble vitamins would be lost. But for the RF dry blanching, you can avoid this kind of issues. So this figure shows the carrot cubes after the RF dry blanching. And this is the RF heating profile. And this is the enzyme activities. Actually, for the dry blanching, the main purpose of the dry blanching is to inactivate the enzyme activity. Then we can protect the color of the samples. And also we can significantly remain better vitamin C content, right? And also for the color is very better, especially for the redness. And this is a comparison between the RF dry blanching versus the conventional blanching methods. So the quality is better, and also the enzyme activity in activation efficiency is very high. And also we can use lower temperature for the alpha dry blanching compared with the conventionally blanching methods. And this method, of course, is an eco-friendly method without generation of the wastewater, and energy consumption is lower than conventionally blanching methods. And this is the first part we use as a dry blanching method. And then for the pre-dewatering, we also tried using the hot air assisted alpha heating to remove part of the water. And we also compare with the conventionally osmotic dehydration method. And finally, we found that even though hot air assisted alpha heating could effectively remove part of the moisture content, but it would cause some of the quality loss, especially compared with the osmotic dehydration method. So finally, we determined that for this part, pre-dewatering, it would be better use the osmotic dehydration method to remove part of the moisture content. And then for the final stage drying, we can use hot air assisted alpha heating as the final stage drying method to increase the whole drying process efficiency. And the last part application for the alpha heating is for the low moisture foods, especially for the low moisture powders. We all know that for low moisture food, generally we consider as the low moisture food as a safe food product or long storage terms product, right? Since it has relatively low moisture content and low water activity levels. And we all know that all the microorganisms cannot grow in this low water activity environmentals. So generally we consider the low moisture food as a safe product, such as like we just mentioned, the almonds and some kind of the nuts, and also the peanut butters, and also like species red pepper powder, and also some wheat flour and baby formula. This kind of the low moisture food, but generally we consider it safe, but in fact it's not. So you can see this is the outbreaks associated with the low moisture food. You can see there are still have the pathogenic microorganism inside this kind of the low moisture food. But generally, since the water activity level is really low, so this kind of the bacteria is listed inside the low moisture food. It cannot grow. It cannot grow in such a low water activity environmentals. But it doesn't mean that this pathogenic microorganisms, they are dead. They are still alive. The only thing is they cannot grow. But if the outside environmental is changed, for example, it's very hot and humidity, if the low moisture food can absorb some moisture from the environment and then increase its water activity levels, then this kind of the bacteria can start to grow and then cause the food safety problems. That's why so many food safety issues caused by the low moisture food. So for the low moisture food or dry food, it doesn't mean safe. So we should have this concept first. And that's why currently a lot of research try to do the pasteurization studies for the low moisture food. It means try to kill the best pathogens to a relatively low level of the low moisture food, especially for the baby formulas, right? And based on this, we did a lot of research by using the alpha heating for the pasteurization of the red pepper powder as a typical low moisture powders. And our target pathogens was Salmonella and Bacillus cereus. Salmonella is the most commonly one in the low moisture food. And Bacillus cereus, it can generate spores inside the food. We all know that for the spores, it's really hard and heat resistance for all the treatment, not only for the thermal treatment, also for most of the non-thermal treatment, it also has really high resistance. So it's really hard to kill the Bacillus cereus spores. So that's why I choose Salmonella and Bacillus cereus spores as our target pathogens. And we did a lot of studies, including like measure the properties of the red paper powder and alpha heating uniformity. And we did the inoculation studies to put our target microorganism inside these powders, and then using the different alpha heating treatment to kill the bacteria. And we see the inactivation efficiency, and also we developed the inactivation model, and we did the kinetic studies, and also we evaluate the quality changes after alpha heating process. And also we did this is the last part of our job. We did we evaluate whether or not there will be sublacially injured cells after the alpha heating process. No one noticed about this issues before. So we first did this part of the work. So let's say this is the alpha heating profile. We also evaluate the different initial water activity levels. The different initial water activity levels would have a significant effect for the alpha pasteurization studies. And generally speaking, higher water activity levels would have the higher alpha pasteurization efficiency. And this is for the Salmonella, and we did the inactivation studies, and we found that Weibo model is the most suitable one to simulate the inactivation curve. So we can say that for the Salmonella, it's relatively easy, right? Based on the different initial water activity levels. So we can say the temperature we are using is from 50 degrees Celsius to 90 degrees Celsius. And we can generally have like around 4 to 5 log reductions. This is for the Salmonella. But for the spores, you can say it's really hard. Generally, we are using the relatively high temperature from 70 degrees Celsius to 90 degrees Celsius. And also you can see we can only achieve like 2 to 3 log reductions. So from this, you can see the spores is really hard to kill, even though we are using the alpha heating method. We all know it's a volumetric and large penetration depth, but it's still not easy to kill the spores. And generally, we found that for the Salmonella, only 3 minutes of alpha heating. The heating process takes about less than 2 minutes, and then we holding about less than 1 minute. So the total process is about 3 minutes. So 3 minutes alpha heating can achieve 5 log reductions, and without cause any adverse impacts on the sample quality. So it's very efficiency method for the pasteurization of the red paper powder. But for the spores, it's really hard. It can only achieve 2 or 3 log reductions. And we also compare the quality change, like the vitamin C and the color changes. And we also did the kinetic studies. And this part is I mentioned, we first explored and investigate whether or not there will be sublacially injured cells after alpha heating. We all know that this kind of the pathogens or microorganisms, right? They like large animals. After the different external stress, when put them to the different external stress, such as alpha heating, right? There will be 3 different kind of things will be happened. The first one is the stress doesn't have any influence on the microorganism, so they are still alive. Another one is it has a significant effect on this pathogens, so it will be dead. That's what we really want, right? We try to use this stress to kill the bacteria and make it dead. But there is another situation, we call it sublacially injured cells. It means that it was injured, but we cannot say it's still alive or it's dead. Maybe after some time it will be dead, or maybe it will be recovered by itself and then it still become alive. So we need clearly know whether or not this processing would cause the sublacially injured cells. This is very important for us to evaluate the food safety of the treatment, of the pasteurization treatment. So we compared with this with the different initial water activity levels and see whether or not there will be sublacially injured cells. And we found that, you see, except at extremely low water activity levels, which is 0.4.4. At this extremely low moisture content levels, water activity levels, there is no sublacially injured cells. But above these moisture levels, we can clearly see there is totally difference between those two. It means that there will be sublacially injured cells, right? So it means that if the initial water activity level is higher than 0.444, then there will be sublacially injured cells after heating. So when we first found this result, we could not explain it. We feel kind of strange. So try to validate this result. We did more research. We try to see whether or not, for example, we determine the repair conditions. We see whether or not the repair conditions would influence our results. And finally, we found there is no significant effects. And also, we compare with the different pasteurization temperatures to see whether or not, and the result is still not. So finally, we can make the conclusion that at the lower initial water activity levels, there will be no sublacially injured cells, but at the relatively higher water activity levels, there will be sublacially injured cells. So after that, we further investigate whether if it can induce the sublacially injured cells. So whether or not this sublacially injured cells would cause direct production effects or cross protection effects. So this is the direct production effects. From here, we could not find there is a clearly direct production effect. So we can say there is no direct production effect. Actually, this is good for our heating process, right? And also, we check about the cross protection effect. We subject the sublacially injured cells, recovered sublacially injured cells to different external stress, such as the ethanol and also the salt and also the acid environmental, to see whether or not there is a cross protection effect. And fortunately, we couldn't find there is a clearly cross protection effect. This is really good, right? It means that even though RF heating could cause certain amount of the sublacially injured cells, but those cells could not cause direct or cross protection effects. Actually, this is really good, and this could be an advantage for the RF pasteurization of the pasteurization treatment, since some of the other treatment, they can cause the sublacially injured cells, and those cells would cause the direct or cross protection effect. So it means if those cells was recovered, it would be really hard to kill them, right? But for RF heating, these things couldn't happen. So this is an advantage for the RF pasteurization treatment. So this is almost about my lecture today, and this is a brief summary. So it's about the RF heating. We should know that it's a rapid and volumetric heating method, and we should know the main heating mechanism for the RF heating is the dipole rotation and the ionic oscillations. And those molecular movement would cause the generation of the heat inside the food. So it's a rapid and volumetric heating method. And also we should know that RF heating, it can use to treat the bulk materials with the large thickness, and it has a lot of advantages compared with the microwave heating. And even though both of them are dielectric heating methods. And as to the application of RF heating, today I'm shared about several applications of course, my research focus. The first one is greens, including the disinfestations of the legume and rough rice, and also drying of the greens, and also the stabilization of rice bran and the wheat germ. This application in the green processing. Others, the next one is about the nuts roasting. We can apply the hot air assisted airflow as a novel roasting method for the nuts, including the peanuts, cashew nuts, and almonds. And the next one is for the fruits and vegetables. For fruits and vegetables, we can apply the air heating as a dry blanching method, and also for the, also as a final stage drying method. And the last one is for the low moisture food, especially for the low moisture powders. We're using air heating as a new pasteurization method for the low moisture powders to increasing the treatment efficacy. But we found that it can kill the spores, but the spores is really hard to kill compared with the pathogens such as the salmonella. And we also validated that RF heating would cause the sublacially injured cells. But unfortunately, these sublacially injured cells would not cause direct and cross protection effects. This also could be an advantage for the RF pasteurization technologies. So that's all about my lectures. And finally, I would like briefly talk about our group. Currently, our group name is about the food processing and molecular nutrition group. Right now, we have around 20 members. We have 3 faculty members, and we have more than 10 graduate students. You can see this is Wendy. She just got her master degree here, and we have very good, pleasant time in the last 3 years. And this is our research group. And also, I would like to mention that in our department, we have the international graduate program for the PhD students, and welcome the students join to our department if you have the interest. And also in our department, we have a lot of joint training programs with the world-class universities, such as Purdue University and some other top universities in the United States. We have those training joint training programs. And those are related publications. Like I just mentioned above, it's about the RF heating applications. And finally, I would like to say thank you. And for, I don't know if there's a time for the questions.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for the material given. But before we move to the question and answer discussion, I would like to say, we would like to say sorry for the unexpected and convenience, uncomfortable situation before. And maybe I would like to suggest for all the participants who want to ask, you can share your question by type your name and then your institution and then followed by your question. And for the first question, we have from this person, Angeline from University of Pajajaran, and the question is, can RF heating method be applied in fisheries product processing?
Yes, that's a good question. Actually, I noticed that the name of our college is Fishery and Marine Science, right?
Yeah.
Actually, this technology, what I mainly focus is on the plant food, right? But this technology can also be used for the fishery products. You can guess what kind of the applications. Actually, as far as I know, we can use this technology for drying of the fishery products. For drying of the fishery products. We also did a very little studies on this. So I didn't mention here. Most of my research focus is on the low moisture food, but it can use for the drying of the fishery products.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer. Yes, sir. And the next question is from Imam with the same institution from Pajajaran University. The question is, I have heard air fryer have been selling for some times, yet there are so many claims that it could made harm based on some opinions since the development of carcinogens during the food processing is unavoidable. In my head, RF in my head, RF and hot air circulation in air fryer are similar. Are similar when the RF technology is mass produced and people use it regularly. Are those health risks still present? Thanks in advance.
Can you say it again? Can you
Okay.
say that again? I didn't follow your question. The signal is not very good. Can you say that again?
Okay, when the RF technology is mass produced and people use it regularly, are those health risks still present? Okay.
I'm sorry. Can
Okay.
There is a question in the chat box. You can see maybe
where?
in the chat box
Okay.
from Imam Chahyan. Yeah.
Oh, there are a lot of questions, seems.
So here,
which one?
for the first one, like, so when RF technology is mass produced, so like mass produced like microwave, and people use it regularly, like in the household, right? So are those health risks still present if people use that regularly, just like microwave?
I didn't see the questions here.
Oh, really? Really proceed? Or maybe we can just move into the another question.
Okay, maybe we just move to another question because we have so many questions that we can that maybe Mr. Jiao can answer. The next question is from.
So sorry. So the previous question is want to ask the risk.
Yeah.
The health risk for the RF technology.
Yep.
Okay, I see. So for the RF technology, like I just mentioned, it's a safe treatment technologies. Actually, this is a very good question. You know, in China, as far as I know, a lot of people's concerned about the safety of the microwave, right? Most of people, they think, oh, for the microwave radiation, it would have the adverse to our human health. So most of people open the microwave and then immediately live away. So they are afraid of that. But I always talk to people that you have no need to afraid about the radiation by the microwave or by the radio frequency. You know why? Since like I mentioned the electromagnetic waves. It's kind of electromagnetic wave like this. I don't know if you can see this slides. Can you see the slides right now?
Yeah, we can see this slide.
Yeah, for the radio wave and the microwave, they have exactly the same frequency range with our cell phone, right? And also with our radio waves. So if you are afraid of the radiation of the radio frequency or microwave, then you have no need to take your phone. You know, your phone is also like this. It's also kind of the radiation. So that's why I said there's no need to concern about the safety of this treatment. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for the answer. And next question is from Fatani with the same institution from Pajajaran University. The question is, if we applied this technology in fish powder, will it affect the protein content since it's rapid heating methods?
Yes, it depends on the temperature, or we can say the treatment intensity. We can use this to heat the fish powder, but what's the final temperature? If the final temperature is higher or the treatment intensity is higher, of course, it would affect the protein structure.
Okay, next we have a question from Anissa with the same institution. The question is, for the fish application which has high moisture content, can we use it directly for drying?
This is a good question. Like I mentioned, actually for the fish product, it's kind of like the fruits and vegetables, right? It has the high moisture content, it has the irregular shape, and also it's very sensitive to heat. I mean, the quality is very sensitive to heat. So if we use the RF heating for the directly for the drying process, then it may not have very good results. I would like to say like this. But I think the most suitable way to apply the RF drying process is like used in the final stage drying as a final stage drying method. It means that for the beginning stage of the drying, we can use a conventional such as hot air drying method, right, to reduce most of the moisture content. And then at the final stage drying method, we're using the hot air drying. We all know that, using the RF drying. We all know for the final stage drying, it would be extremely hard. Generally, the drying rate is pretty low, right? So we can use this technology as a final stage drying method. Then it can apply the advantage of these technologies. I don't suggest that you use this drying technology directly for the fishery products. I think it's not a good way. That's it.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. And okay, next is from Aidin with the same institution. The question is, for the application on almond, which has high fat content, can it prolong the storage? For how long, and is there any adverse effect on the sample? Thank you.
Okay, that's also a good question. Actually, we're using RF for the almonds. Is try to roast the almonds. So the temperature is very high. It's about 130 degrees Celsius, and it takes about around half an hour to roast the almonds. As we know that for the almonds, the moisture content is very low, right? And after we roasted the almonds, the moisture content is much lower. I think it's below 5% wet basis. So the water activity and moisture content is at a really low level. So the storage life, of course, would be extended. Right? And the second question is there any adverse effects on the samples? I would like to say, generally speaking, since what we really want is the roasted flavors, right? After roasted, the texture and the flavor is really good. But as we know that if the temperature is very high, there would like the Maillard reactions would happen during this process. It may cause some of the adverse components or hazard components, but this amount is relatively low, and we can also control this by optimize our roasting treatment process. So we can try to avoid this kind of adverse effects. So generally speaking, the quality of the roasted products is really good. Like the texture and the aroma and the flavor of the product is relatively good. It doesn't have too much adverse effects. That's my answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer. Okay, for all the participants, if there is still a question, you can still share your question on the chat box, because or maybe you can raise your hands. Okay, Pak Ruski. Mr. Ruski is one of our lecturer. Maybe you can give the question.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Professor, for this insightful lecture. I would like to inquire three brief questions
Okay.
regarding the RF. The first one is, I noticed earlier from your presentation that RF use lower wavelength compare from microwave. What I would like to ask that does it has an undesirable effect for the safety, for example, for plastic packaging and food.
Oh my God, I cannot hear you right
packaging.
now.
And
I'm sorry.
What
I think
the app has any undesirable if does yes.
Excuse me, the signal is not very well. I cannot hear you right now. The connection is not very good.
Maybe I can write the question in the
Okay,
chat box.
Yeah, that would be great. I cannot
Yeah.
hear you right now.
Thank you.
So maybe Lausha, for the first question, you can answer it first. It's for the radio frequency application in the on the food packaging. Like, is that any undesirable effect like that? If like the food is hitting during it was on a packaging.
I will try to see whether or not I get the question.
Okay.
You are trying to ask about whether or not RF heating can use for the food packaging, packaged food.
Yeah, packaged food. Yeah.
That's interesting questions. Actually, we can first imagine that whether or not RF heating can be used to treat the packaged food. So we can think about it, whether or not RF can be used to treat the packaged food. Like I mentioned, it kind of similar with the microwave heating. So we can think about, can microwave heat to treat the packaged food? I think the answer is yes, right? So for the RF heating, of course, it can treat the packaged food. But the problem is what kind of the packaging materials is suited for the RF heating technologies. As we know, for the microwave heating, not all the packaging materials can be used. For example, the metal or glass, we can not use this kind of no, glass is okay, but for the metal, right? We cannot use this kind of the containers to packaging the food and then subject to the microwave heating. So it's the same as the RF heating. For the RF heating, first, you need to choose the appropriate packaging materials. And second, the materials must be able to subject to the high temperature, right? So that's the two minimum requirement for the packaging materials. And of course, commonly, most cases, we are using the plastic materials for the RF heating or microwave heating for the packaging of the food materials. As we all know that if the temperature is higher and with the longer time, there may be some migrations for the small molecules inside the packaging materials to food. So that would cause the contamination of the food. So this is what we really need to concern. So that means for the packaging materials, we must be carefully selected. The materials must be able to substand or can be too, can be to hold the high temperature. It means high temperature cannot have the effects on this kind of the packaging materials. I think this is my answer for the first question. And okay, there is a second question, right? What's the maximum temperature reached from RF heating? and can it be used for the application other than baking or roasting? Oh, there is no maximal temperature for the earth heating. If we keep turning on the earth heating, it means the temperature can increase all the time. So for the roasting process, roasting process, we can use a temperature higher than 130 degrees Celsius. If we want, we can reach the temperature higher than that. And can be used for the other applications other than baking and roasting, high heat temperature treatment. And like I mentioned, for the food processing, generally higher temperature is like roasting. It uses relatively high temperature, right? More than 100. And also for the pasteurization, we are using higher temperature, but this temperature is like around 100. And for the enzyme inactivations, it's about 110 degrees Celsius. Actually, those are the high temperature treatment for the food processing. I don't know for the other area, but for the food processing, generally, we don't want to use very high temperature, since we know that high temperature would always cause the quality loss. So that's why we try to use the lower temperature to finish it or to achieve our treatment purpose. So we try to avoid to use the higher temperature. But if the sample quality, but if there is no problem with the sample quality, of course, we can use this to heat to a very high temperature level. There is no problem. So I think this is my questions for the, my answer for the second questions. Is that clear?
Professor, can it be used for sterilization, milk sterilization, for example?
You mean for the sterilization, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes, of course. It can be used for sterilization. Oh. Yeah, like I mentioned, it's a fast and volumetric heating method. It can use, but the only problem is that the samples, the food materials, whether or not can subject or can how to say those kind of high temperature, whether or not would cause the quality loss of this kind of the food materials. That's the problem. But for this technology, of course, it can be used for the sterilization purpose.
Okay, thank you for the answer, Professor.
Thank you for your questions.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for answering all the questions that all the participants have been asking. Maybe the question from Mr. Ruski is the last question on today's question and answer session. But I would like to say thank you for Mr. Jiao for joining us and share some knowledge about food processing with us. But before we close today's event or activity, I would like to suggest all the participants to turn on the camera because we would like to have the second documentation. And I would like to greet all the lecturers that joining in this room from Pajajaran University. There is Mr. Miss Mrs. Is, Mrs. Emma, and then Mrs. Effie, Mrs. Olia, and Mr. Ruski. And then our beloved Dean, Mr. Yudi. Maybe you can turn on the camera so we could have the second documentation. Okay, for everyone, please turn on your camera because I would like to have the second documentation. Okay.
Wow. Wow, I didn't notice that there are more than 100 audience.
Yeah.
More than 100 people. Wow, amazing.
Okay. To shorten the time, maybe we could start the documentation now. For the operator, maybe you can help. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, for the second photo, 1, 2, 3. And the last one, I would like to all of you guys have a hand sign like this. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much for all the participants to join.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks. But before that, we would like to give Mr. Jiao a certificate as yeah, for
Wow, thank
Yeah.
you so much.
yeah, the certificate from us for being a guest speaker on today activity. Thank you so much.
Okay,
And
thank you.
then yeah, and then we finally reached the end of the event. I would like to say thanks to all the participants and especially for Mr. Zhao for being
Thank you.
our guest speaker today. Once again, thank you so much. And hopefully the knowledge gain will be helpful in the present and the future. I am Maureen as the Master of Ceremony. From the deepest of my heart, I do apologize if there are any mistakes during the event. And thank you so much. Have a good day and see you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zhao. Thank you so
Thank you,
much for all
Olga.
the participants.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oke. Udah.
Okay, thank you so much for all the participants for joining today activity. Bye-bye.
Indonesia is the largest archipelagic country in the world, with 2/3 of its area is the sea and has more than 17,000 islands with a coastline of 81,000 kilometers. Inevitably, Indonesia has the potential for extraordinary wealth of marine resources, especially in the fisheries sector. The lack of human resources to manage this potential is a challenge for a university in producing competent experts. Pajajaran University, one of the universities in West Java, is here to answer this challenge by establishing a Faculty of Fisheries and Marine Science. Since 1965, Pajajaran University has held higher education in the fields of fisheries science. Then on July 7, 2005, through a decree by the chancellors of the establishments of the Faculty of Fisheries and Marine Science, Pajajaran University. The establishment of this faculty is a response to the desires of the community, especially the people of West Java, to be able to produce experts or competent human resources who can manage marine and fisheries resources. Currently, we are given the mandate to become managers at the Faculty of Fisheries and Marine Science, Pajajaran University, facing the Industrial Revolution 4.0 with increasing challenges. Today's educational institutions are required to have agility and flexibility. We are committed to making this faculty a superior and internationally competitive faculty. We will strive to produce graduates who have 21st century skills, graduates who are able to communicate globally, graduates who have honest character and integrity, graduates who are easy to work with at the same time, graduates who have a high work ethic, as well as graduates who are easy to adapt. In Jatinangor, we have 5 buildings, as well as outside of Jatinangor, we have PSDKU Pangandaran facility and a marine station in Indramayu. Our faculty has 8 laboratoriums and 1 library. Faculty of Fisheries and Marine Science has 6 study program: Fisheries Study Program, Marine Science Study Program, Fisheries Study Program in Pangandaran Campus, Master Program of Marine Conservation, Master Program of Fisheries, and Marine Tourism Vocational Program. Our curriculums consist of face-to-face learning, e-learning, laboratorium learning, which we do in our own laboratory, and field-based learning. Students were encouraged to enroll up to 145 academic credit with a graduation requirement or thesis.